Hey there. So my next guest is another podcaster, lifelong gamer just like me. In fact, I was on his show first, and he had such a great time with me that he when I put out a notice that I needed an extra guest, he was like one of the first people in line. He's like, "Let me on your show." And I'm like, "Absolutely." So this is a good one. He gives a ton of great advice on how to start and build and scale a podcast, specifically how to discuss about how to get sponsors and larger guests to come on your show. So if you are interested at all in starting a podcast, this one's definitely for you. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today I have a very special guest with us. I have Zac Brown. Hey, Zac, how's it going?
Not too bad, man. How's it going?
Well, it's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. How about yourself?
It's raining here in New York, and it's fucking horrible.
All right.
Oh, God.
Never mind what we were just discussing. All right, so
Hey,
Zac,
New York.
I know, right? All right, so I'd like to get this show started like just right away, just getting right into it. So why don't you go ahead and begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, I run a podcast, and Brad's been on it. We sat there and had some fun. Sat there, told some stories, some old lawyer stories, and I messaged him. He was looking for some guests and stuff to finish out this season, and I'm like, "Hey, I'll come on. We'll sit here and tell some stories and have some fun and have some conversation." I'm a guy who's just hanging out, playing some video games. I was almost a full-time streamer for a little bit, and then kind of gave it up after putting 8 hours a day plus working 8 hours, 9 hours a day. Kind of got tiring after a little bit.
It gets a little rough.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zac, I begin every episode with a single question, and I believe you've watched a few of my episodes, so you should kind of know what this is. But on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you?
Oh, definitely a 9.
Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of stories I couldn't tell here, but dude, I sit here and play video games all day. Obviously, that's not weird in this specific niche, but in general, weird. I'll say literally on the toilet playing Yu-Gi-Oh for an hour, just because
that's totally normal.
You need time to yourself, and sitting here just spending time with my wife, hanging out. But I'd probably say like an 8 or a 9.
Fantastic. All right, so Zac, it's the Gamerpreneur. I need your gaming cred. So when did you first start playing video games?
I was 2 years old. So now I'm looking at 25 years. I told my wife the other day, I was like, you're not the longest relationship in my life. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, video games started when I was 2. It's hit its quarter century now.
Okay, when did you start playing?
I started playing NES and SNES, started out with Mario Kart and Super Mario 3 and stuff like that.
Okay, and it progressed to?
Pokemon and RPGs, and then started sports and racing games. I kind of play everything and don't shy away from very much.
Love it. Okay, and what do you play today?
Mainly Call of Duty. Just downloaded Need for Speed for me and my kids, help them play through Pokemon, and kind of just letting them experience some stuff myself, and kind of just enjoying everything.
Love it. How old are your kids?
I got a 10-year-old and a 8-year-old. 9. She's almost.
I love, I used to be a bailiff for a court, and whenever the judge would ask the couple, because it was usually doing adoptions, and what I'm referring to here, they ask the husband, so when were you married? And they get that same look on their face, like,
It's crazy too, because you just get that thought, like, I'm either going to really screw this up or I'm going to look dumb. Those are the only 2 options.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
What time of year is it?
I went into the doctor's the other day to get medicine for my daughter, and they're looking at me really like I'm stupid. I'm like, I got this right? So I sent a message to my wife. She's like, no, the lady at the counter is just dumb. Don't worry about it. She's looking at me like 2020. Oh, I thought you were talking about 1920. I was like, most people say 20, they mean 2020. Most people that are born in 1920 are gone now. Like, what are we talking about?
Okay, one more gaming question, then we're going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the show. How about this? You played a lot of games. You said you were almost a professional streamer, 8 hours a day. If you had to choose one game as your all-time favorite, what is it?
Ocarina of Time.
The DS remake or the 3DS
No,
remake
I've
or
only
the
played it
original?
on N64.
Okay,
Yeah,
that was groundbreaking, by the way. Like
yeah,
when that
yeah,
first
it
came
was.
out, and like Navi's flying through for the first time, you're like, oh, look at this! It's Legend of Zelda.
And like, I know it's bad to say, but I've never gone back to play the other ones, like the third person ones looking from the top down. I've never gone back and played those. I've only played the 3D ones. So I'm like, and that game just caught my attention, and I have never been able to play anything else other than the 3D ones, just because it just too different.
I don't know if they've ever gotten back to the majesty of Ocarina of Time. There was just something about it. It was so grand. And then Majora's Mask kind of was smaller. And then, Skyward Sword. And then everything was smaller afterward. I know Breath of the Wild was huge,
Yeah.
but like the dungeons weren't really like super big dungeons. And like, yeah, the world was big, but it never felt like the adventure of Ocarina of Time, in my opinion.
It seemed a little too loose for what they were trying to go for of having a follow-up of Ocarina of Time. Yeah, it's huge. But if they had a progression through the entire thing instead of, hey, all of the monsters scale with you. Everything you could go and defeat Ganon right now as long as you have a sword. It's just how much effort you want to put in into that battle. Yes, there's the speed running there, but why would you want to do that?
Absolutely. All right. So let's kind of get to the preneur part. Zach, can you give me your professional background?
Well, I was in sales for a long time. They tried to promote me to manager. I ended up hurting my neck, and now I'm trying to find my own space online with my podcast, Real Men Talk Shit, and kind of get everybody's background, try and get people to tell stories and sit there and joke around and have some fun. Same, just like when I had you on. Just try and loosen people up and get them to talk about the things that are actually genuinely funny instead of people trying to put up a front and be funny. So many people just try and fake things, and it's just good to get them opened up.
That's
You have
absolutely
TV
true.
people on there and everything else.
And it's easy to be naturally funny when you have a child because the dad jokes just come naturally.
Yeah.
Okay, so why did you decide to start a podcast? Like, why that?
I ended up falling in love with a show called Painkiller already, who was started by Woody's Gamertag and a few of the other like YouTube OGs and stuff like that. And then I fell in love with Stern and like that kind of having a conversation with somebody and like drawing their thoughts out. I genuinely think that's thoroughly interesting. Like I had a CO, not a CO, a military police officer on last week, and he told a story about how he was in Afghanistan, I believe. And you guys will have to go check out the story because it's also in his book. So I'm not going to sit here and retell it, but just like I like hearing people's thoughts. I like hearing whether they're dealing with mental health issues or they're dealing with problems with themselves or they're just a genuinely funny person and want to tell a story. Hearing how people think and interact with things has always been the thing I did. When I was 14 and 15, people would message me and tell me they're sad, and I would sit there and wait until they're happy to sign offline. That was just me.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add something to the world because I never really had that as a kid, and I kind of wanted to bring some light and happiness with my crude humor.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, how long have you been doing this?
Streaming, YouTube, what are we asking? Just the podcast?
How long have you been doing the podcast? Yeah.
About a year.
Okay. And how's it going?
It's exploded since about maybe a week since before you were on. I had around the time I had you on, I had a presidential candidate that ended up failing, and a guy from TV from 60 Days In on, all within 3 weeks of each other. So back to back to back. And it just slowly started growing. Now it's just, I just want the numbers, and it's such a thirst to get them to go.
Fantastic. Okay, so what's the secret? What's the secret sauce to growing a podcast then?
I don't know. I think it's being genuine.
Is that like not normal?
No, it's really weird because I'm going to go into a little bit of the background of what's happened in the past 2 months. So I actually invited the guy from 60 Days In on as a co-host, and he brought me in as a co-host on his show. And about I think 4 weeks ago, he looked at me and he's like, "This show's too crude." And he's very, very religious. And I told him, I was like, I was open with you from the beginning. You had an episode with me. You weren't caught off guard. Like, be honest with me. You should have told me from the beginning that you didn't want to do it, or at least be open in some way. And like, I'm not going to change the way I speak. I'm not going to change the way I talk. Having interesting conversations with people and making them feel like you're being genuine is the most important thing. Like, I can't change how I talk. I'm from New York. Like, if I censor myself, I'm gonna do the best I can, but it slips up. Like, it just happens. It's how I
First 30
speak.
seconds of this show.
I apologize. I'm not perfect. I honestly say that I'm not perfect, and I apologize to all of you teenage years. But I just try and be as genuine as I can. I guess I'm more of like that Gary Vee style of I'm going to say it how I'm going to say it regardless, and try and taper myself if I need to in certain situations.
Certainly. Okay, now what are the qualities that make up a good podcast host? You've been doing this for about a year, and in that time, I've imagined you've done enough of these episodes in order to kind of get into the groove.
I think it's just understanding not only your audience, but understanding what you're trying to do. If you're trying to bring light, or trying to bring storytelling, or trying to bring anything to what your audience is going to want, you don't want the same thing every single week, which is why I'm here. I'm sure you don't want the same gaming person that has 1,000 followers and that's it. You want different stories. You want different ideas. And I didn't feel like that was being done. Like, I'm not afraid to talk politics. I'm not afraid to talk gaming. I'm not afraid to talk about my past stories or anything, or even my childhood. And so many people censor themselves in those ways, and I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Because the more you close yourself into a box, the less you're going to be able to expand later, as you see with a lot of streamers.
Absolutely. Okay, so there are a lot of podcasts out there, right? Like lots and lots of them. What makes you different? How are you unique, Zac?
I don't think anybody's generally unique in that sense. If you genuinely think about it, if you have an interview show, you're an interview show. There's only such minute things that you can change. You can speak differently. Obviously, I'm a New Yorker, so I speak differently, just like you speak differently. You could have an education, you can have a different outlook on life, but each individual circumstance that you have, which is why I've made my show more storytelling and stuff like that, is the only thing that's genuinely unique about you is your thoughts and your stories, not how you interact with the world, because it's going to be about the same. You
I love
change
that
things
answer.
1%, but is 1% a lot?
Hey, 1% difference given enough distance, you end up in many different places.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been doing this about a year, like you said. What do you wish you had known when you were first starting out?
I thought that sponsorships and me getting the big name sponsors to follow me, which was part of our first episode together, was actually going to provide legitimacy. And I thought that it would actually prove, hey, I'm here. I can speak to people. You just have to actually understand what I'm saying in order to get where I'm coming from. And because some people refuse to click or don't have the time to click, it doesn't come off correctly.
Okay. And what does that mean exactly?
Like I had sponsors like Reebok and stuff like that from the beginning. So, and I think you were even
I
surprised
was
when
blown away. Yeah.
yeah, and we had a conversation afterwards, and it's just like, if people don't click on the podcast, them hearing Reebok isn't going to blow them away. Yes, if you get them to click on the podcast, which is why I think I'm kind of trying to change my business model a little bit, that's when you're going to get people to actually interact and enjoy it, not necessarily just saying that you have a Reebok sponsorship.
Okay. All right. Now, say that someone came to you and they're looking to start their own podcast. Do you have any advice for them? Like, where should they start, and then kind of what steps should they take?
Don't be afraid.
Afraid
Be
of
afraid to don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to sit there and message the largest people in the space that you want to be in. Like, how many people actually genuinely think that you're going to get a TV star on your show, or ghost like I have this week from Modern Warfare? Like, you sit there and everybody puts themselves into a box, and they're so afraid to say, hey, I want you to work with me, or they think that they're never going to get an answer, when genuinely, if you put in the 2 seconds of effort to type out an email and taper it towards that person and show what you've done, there's a really good chance that you're going to get a yes.
Okay. So your advice is to simply put yourself out there and hope people say yes.
Yeah, you got to dive. If you don't swan dive, then how are you going to be a swan?
Okay. And like what, just a couple messages a day, or how do you do it?
Oh, it depends. If I'm getting a lot of answers and I'm feeling extremely good about myself, like I am today, I have the rest of the month scheduled. And me and you were talking, and I was trying to find any guest because the ghost voice actor canceled for this week, so my episode's going up like 2 days late. But it's just like I went from having no guest for a week to having the rest of the month scheduled and a presidential debate kind of thing scheduled for the week of election day. And just once you start getting those yeses, nothing can compare. Especially if like they actually have a following and you're like, there's crossover here that could actually genuinely work. There's no feeling like, hey, this could really work. Just like when I got the email back from you. And it started then, if you actually look at the guests that I had at that point, and now I do.
100%. I remember you discussing it like when we were off camera, and you were very excited for the future, and I kept cheering you on. So absolutely. Okay, now Zac, if I can, I'd like to talk to you about you a little more personally. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about your podcast, we've talked about you as a gamer, but you personally, I'd like to know, you see, I believe that our biggest learning experiences in life are our failures. If you don't have failures, it's kind of tough to learn like the real lessons in life, right? It's when you get smacked in the face, you get knocked down, that you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, figure out what happened to be able to move forward. So I want to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Well, my biggest failure wasn't money. It wasn't anything crazy. My entire life, my parents kind of like looked down on me quite a bit. And I treated them as my best friend. Like I took care of them to the end of the world. And a few years ago, when I injured my neck, they sat there and they were homeless and they moved into my house. And I was the one who was providing for all 8 people that were in my house. And it progressively got worse and worse and worse. And then they looked at me and said, "We're not paying for anything." They handed me $500 out of, I think, almost 1,000. Was like, "Hey, we're not paying any more than this," and drove off. And there was other relationship breaking down and stuff like that. But it's just like you can genuinely see where things were happening before, after things happen. And then you genuinely see how things progress and stuff like that. Like I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I'm so much hungrier now than you good?
Yeah.
Somebody trying to break in?
No, I don't know what that was.
But you slowly begin to progress and see how you want your life to be after failing your entire life, essentially. Like, I had no money as a kid. I starved myself every other day or so. And I eat every night. I eat 3 meals a day. And I have extra money in order to be able to invest into things and stuff like that. And buying a house and everything else, like going from 5, 6 years ago being dirt poor to buying a house and trying to build up a business and everything else. How many people actually genuinely can bootstrap themselves enough to do that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so glad that you were able to turn it all around like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, kind of related, but more positive question. What is something that you're working to improve on in yourself today?
I want to be a better business owner. I think everybody that does this is like, you want success. The only way that I feel successful in this or in life is getting this business off the ground. So at what point am I going to actually succeed and feel successful? Like I felt success when I got you on my show. I felt success when I progressively got better and better guests. But at the same time, it's like, am I the problem? Why is this not succeeding to the level that I want it to?
Okay. Okay. Now, kind of a more fun question. What is something that people misunderstand about you the first time they meet you?
I think everybody thinks that can't word it that way. I think people think that I'm very mean and very outspoken, which I am. I genuinely am. I'll tell you exactly how I feel, but I'm being genuine when I say it. I'm not being rude or derogatory because that's not how I feel. If I make a joke or I try and lighten the mood, I'm trying to joke and lighten the mood. I'm going to sit there and just like I made you feel comfortable, we sat there and broke everything down. We sat there and went through every single little bit of something. And I don't think that rubs a lot of people the right way
It
because
depends on the person for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, Zac, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. How do people find you? How do they get to your show? Tell us what your handles are.
Well, I'm going to start uploading the entire full uncut episodes up on Facebook. I also have clips on Facebook on at Real Men Talk Shit. I believe the I is a 1, but I feel like if you search it with an I, it also pops up because it's searched both ways. Because although I'm dumb, I actually figured out how to do that. I'm hopefully launching some sort of production company to help people in the space with sponsorship and stuff like that, just like I was talking to you about after the last episode we did, and trying to help people understand how to get sponsorship because so many people want to monetize this stuff. So if you have a show like this or you want to sit there and stream and understand how to get sponsorship, message my Facebook page and I will be thoroughly available to help if I'm able to, because some of this nobody knows how to do and you just wing it. But I do have some sort of knowledge and I will be glad to help you guys.
I love it. Wonderful. All right, Zac. So as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
Nah, man, thanks for having me on. If there's any questions that you have, I'm willing to answer them. Obviously, most people don't understand what the title of my show is and don't get the joke behind it, which absolutely baffles me. Hopefully, our audiences overlap just a little bit and kind of understand it. But if anybody's been around Modern Warfare 2 lobbies or Modern Warfare lobbies, you'll understand where Real Men Talk Shit comes from and why it's that way. Because if you can't understand how to make a joke and rib somebody, then you're not going to get the show.
You also have to be able to take the jokes, not just be able to give the joke.
Exactly.
A lot of people are not able to take a joke.
And if you can't talk and understand what somebody's saying and have that little bit of intelligence there, it's very hard for people to get the joke.
Absolutely. All right, Zac Brown, thank you so much for coming on. I genuinely do appreciate it.
Anytime, man. I told you that from the beginning.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.